Another component of working in 3D within After Effects is using camera objects to view your scene and to kind of present your view of your canvas and compositions. So let's walk through some basics of adding and controlling cameras in After Effects. Cameras are added by going to Layer, New, Camera, or you can hit Control Alt Shift C. It's kind of a complicated hotkey. I usually will just add cameras by going up to this menu, even though I'm such a hotkey fan normally. But we'll create a camera. I'm going to bring this pop-up onto my screen. And when we click to create a camera, we get a few options. Now, I'll say the default settings are my go-to. It's rare that I get into too many details within the camera kind of specifications here. Occasionally I'll enable depth of field. That'll allow things in a distance to blur and that sort of thing. And occasionally I'll switch between a 1-node and a 2-node camera. I'll create 2 of them and show you the difference there. But to start, we're going to establish a 1-node camera, and we're going to leave all of the other details the same. And hit OK. And what this does is it allows our camera as an object to view our composition, and thus if we move the camera, we're going to change how the scene is presented in our composition. Let me show you what I mean. So I have a camera object, and I have my scene showing my active camera, or it turns out to be camera 1, they're the same thing. And if I move my camera, say if I take its position and move it left or right, my square appears to be moving. However, if I look at my white solid, I can see its position is not changing, so it is indeed the camera taking over and making that object move, or appear to move rather. Whoops, let's not do that. Undo. So let me set up a little bit better scene so we can tell how appealing this effect really is. I'm going to duplicate my white solid, and I'm going to take the first white solid and I'm going to position it, it's going to stay identical position to the other one, but I'm going to move it back in Z space. So I'm going to open up the transforms. I'm going to take its position, move to the Z coordinate, which is the 3rd coordinate, and I'm going to push it back in space. And as I do that, it appears to shrink, but it's actually just being moved in perspective further back in my scene. Let's do this one more time. Control or Command D to duplicate. Open up the transform, look for the position, and we're going to go back even further. So let's go back to maybe 3000. Just type it in there. And now I have 3 solids. I'm going to select them all. Actually, I'm going to select everything and hit the U key just to collapse them. And then I'm going to open my camera up by itself, just for cleanliness on my screen. Now, if I position my camera to the right, something pretty cool happens. We realize and can now observe that there are in fact 3 separate images, and they're all physically spaced apart from one another in Z space. So if I orient my camera or rotate it, let's see, oops, that's up and down. Let's move it on the Y. So this is the Y rotation. What I've done is I've taken my camera and moved it far to the right of kind of center stage, and then I've turned the camera to the left using rotation. So now I can see these 1, 2, and 3 objects rendered in Z space. So this is really a pretty important revelation when dealing with 3D, is kind of understanding how it works. It no longer matters necessarily where these are positioned, I guess on kind of 2D planes. Now you have to be thinking about 3D space. So that's the 1-node camera. I'm going to turn this one off. There is a 2-node camera. So let's go to Layer, New, Camera. And instead of 1-node, we'll go to 2-node camera. And I'm going to hit OK. A 2-node camera is going to look nearly identical to a 1-node camera. The only difference is that under the transform, we now have a point of interest is a new transform parameter on a 2-node camera. And what this means is I can actually control what the camera is intending to be looking at. Whereas on a 1-node camera, I don't get a separate controller over what the camera looks at. It's almost as though I can only kind of hold the camera with my hands and move it left, right, up, down. With the 2-node camera, we're actually getting a separate point of interest that can be animated independently of where the camera is located. I'll go into this in a little more depth in a future video once we start messing with our different views and other ways to kind of arrange our scene. Other details within cameras, know that they have position controls, orientation, which kind of handles the orbit, and X, Y, and Z rotations. There are also some other camera options that are relatively in-depth that we'll talk about in a future video. But these control things like zoom, so you can manipulate the zoom of your camera. Let's make sure I'm on the right one. Both 1 and 2-node cameras will have these features. But the zoom, which can control how near or far your objects appear to be. Things like depth of field that when turned on can control blurring of objects in the distance or based on a focal distance. Focal distance and aperture and blur level all can impact how that blur occurs and how and when it happens, as well as some iris definitions. So if you're familiar with traditional photography, many of these features will be helpful for you to kind of manipulate to get some different looks and feels that you're after. So we might go into a few of these details a little bit later on, but for now, just know that your cameras can control what is appearing in your compositions. These cameras are going to largely work with 3D layers. So while you can use cameras to do just about anything, 3D layers really benefit from having kind of camera controls. That way you can change where the view of your scene is coming from versus just a traditional kind of front view that we have been using so far in the class.